Imagine this. You're standing on a mountain you've spent years climbing. You've sweat, bled, and sacrificed to get there. And just as you reach for the next ledge, someone you trusted, someone you brought with you, drives a knife between your ribs. Not literally, but emotionally. A betrayal that shakes your soul. You don't understand it. You replay every moment. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? And most importantly, why would they do this to me?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
The truth is, betrayal never comes from enemies. It comes from those we let close. That proximity is what makes it hurt. And this is where Machiavelli begins to whisper from the shadows of history. He doesn't offer comfort. He offers clarity. Because while most people ask, how do I avoid being betrayed? Machiavelli asks, why are people so willing to betray in the first place? We think betrayal is rare, but it's not. It's common, it's human. And unless we understand the root of betrayal, we will keep walking blindly into the knives of others. We will keep giving our trust to those who haven't earned it. We will keep mistaking closeness for loyalty. But Machiavelli warns us loyalty is not natural. It must be cultivated, managed, and sometimes even faked. Because people are not loyal by default. They are loyal to their needs. Here is the real reason people stab you in the back. It benefits them. That's it. That's the ugly truth. Not because they're evil. Not because they want to hurt you. But because, in that moment, betraying you serves them more than staying loyal to you. Maybe it gives them power or status or freedom or safety. But make no mistake, it's a calculation, a cost-benefit analysis. And if you don't understand that people are constantly evaluating their position in your life, you will keep being shocked when they leave it. Machiavelli teaches that people are ruled more by fear than love. And when they fear losing something, especially power or comfort, they will betray even those they care about. You may have given someone everything, your time, your trust, your secrets. But if they believe betraying you brings a greater gain, they will almost always choose the gain. That's not cynicism. That's realism. Because people are loyal to their own survival first. So what does this mean for us? Are we supposed to become paranoid? Suspicious of everyone? No, not paranoid precise. The trick is not to stop trusting. It's to trust with eyes open. To stop giving blind trust and start giving earned trust. You watch for patterns, not promises. To understand that betrayal isn't always personal. Sometimes it's just opportunity meeting weakness. There's a Machiavellian principle that still holds today. People will remain loyal only as long as it is in their interest to do so. That means your relationships, friendships, business, romance are always shifting, always fluid. The moment someone believes they can gain more by turning on you than staying with you, the loyalty is at risk. That doesn't make them evil. It makes them human. And understanding this lets you stop taking betrayal so personally and start guarding your position with strategy. Let's pause here and ask something deeper. When was the last time you betrayed yourself for someone else's comfort? When did you silence your voice, shrink your strength, or suppress your truth just to stay accepted or approved? Because betrayal doesn't always come from others. Sometimes the first knife is in our own hands. And when we betray ourselves, we teach others how to betray us too. There's also another layer to betrayal: jealousy. People will betray you when your success becomes a mirror to their failure, when your courage exposes their fear, when your light makes their shadow feel unbearable. Instead of rising with you, they'll try to cut you down. Not because you hurt them, but because your existence reminds them that they are not living fully. Betrayal, in this way, is a form of spiritual revenge. Machiavelli would say this: don't be surprised when people betray you. Be surprised when they don't. Because in a world where fear is stronger than gratitude, betrayal is not an exception, it's a strategy. To avoid it, you must understand what people value, what they fear, and what they're willing to sacrifice. You must learn to see the hidden calculations behind smiles and handshakes. Not to become cold, but to become clear. So how do we protect ourselves? First, by understanding incentive. Everyone in your life is driven by something: validation, control, money, love, power. If you don't know what drives the people around you, you won't know what might pull them away. You must see the hidden currency in every relationship. What are they getting from you? And what happens if that currency runs dry? Second, understand that most people betray not in rage, but in silence. They don't explode. They drift. They stop showing up. They smile while they plot. They say "I'm fine" while they're packing the knife. And by the time you see it, it's already too late. That's why awareness isn't optional. It's essential. Third, stop overvaluing loyalty from those who haven't proven it. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they belong there. Time does not equal trust. Proximity does not equal loyalty. And history does not equal future. You must reevaluate your relationships not by how long they've lasted, but by how much truth they hold. Ask yourself this: who in your life has access to your deepest self, but hasn't earned that access through consistency, integrity, or sacrifice? Who have you allowed into your inner circle just because they were there, not because they deserved to stay? These are hard questions, but they reveal what needs to change. Because betrayal rarely comes from new people. It comes from the ones we've kept too close for too long, without clarity. Machiavelli would advise us to create layers of closeness. Not everyone gets the same access. Not everyone should know your plans, your wounds, your power. You must learn to protect your inner world like a fortress. Open the gates only for those who've proven they can guard it. And even then, watch. This doesn't mean living in fear. It means living in awareness. Because the most powerful people in history were not the most trusting. They were the most discerning. They knew that trust, once broken, is rarely repaired. And they knew that forgiveness is not the same as access. You can forgive someone and still keep them out of your kingdom. There's also this: sometimes you are betrayed not because you were weak, but because you were strong. Because you triggered someone's insecurity. Because your growth reminded them of their stagnation. Because your courage disrupted the story they've told themselves about life. And in those moments, betrayal is not about you. It's about what you awaken in others. But here's the final twist: sometimes betrayal is necessary. Sometimes the knife cuts away illusions. Sometimes being stabbed in the back wakes you up to what you couldn't see before. It reveals the truth of people, of patterns, of power. And in that pain, there is purification. You lose the illusion, but you gain sight. And once you see, you never go back. So the next time someone betrays you, don't just ask, "Why did they do this?" Ask, "What was I refusing to see? What was I pretending was solid when it was already cracking? What part of me allowed access without awareness?" Because betrayal is not just a wound, it's a mirror. And if you're willing to look, it will show you everything. What if betrayal was never meant to destroy you, but to initiate you? What if the knife in your back was not just a weapon, but a key, a painful, precise reminder that you've outgrown the people and patterns you once trusted? We often see betrayal as a collapse, a crisis of morality, or a violation of friendship. But Machiavelli challenges us to see it as a political act, a psychological moment of truth. He doesn't ask us to mourn the betrayal, he asks us to understand it, to dissect it, and most importantly, to use it. Let's go deeper into the psychology of betrayal. People don't just betray because it benefits them. They betray when they believe they won't get caught, or when they believe the consequences are worth it. It's not just about opportunity, it's about perceived immunity. This is why betrayal often comes when you're most vulnerable, when you're trusting, generous, and distracted. When you're building the future with someone, they may be calculating how to take it from you. Not because they're always evil, but because your success has become too tempting, your light too blinding. There's a moment in every betrayer's mind where a switch flips. They go from "I would never hurt them" to "I have to do this for myself." That switch often comes after envy, resentment, or suppressed comparison has been building in the background. They smile. They nod. They say, "I'm happy for you." But internally, they're keeping score. And the moment they feel too far behind, they turn. Betrayal is rarely spontaneous. It's a slow burn. And the final act is just the last scene in a drama that's been unfolding silently for months. Machiavelli would say that betrayal is not a question of character, it's a question of circumstance. Given the right pressure, the right temptation, the right narrative, almost anyone can justify betrayal. This is why trust must never be blind. Not because we should fear everyone, but because we must accept the nature of human behavior. People are not always as loyal as they seem. They are loyal to their needs, their insecurities, their ambitions. And when those shift, so does their allegiance. So how do we prevent betrayal? The truth is, we can't completely, but we can reduce its power. We do that by first removing ourselves from the illusion that betrayal is about us. It's not. It's about the betrayer. It's about their weakness, their story, their pain. We take it personally because it feels personal. But often it's not. You just happen to be the nearest target when their inner conflict reached a boiling point. This is why some people who betray you will later try to come back. Not because they've changed, but because they thought they would gain more by leaving and realized they didn't. They miscalculated. And now they want access again. But here's the danger. If you allow them back in without consequence, you teach them that betrayal is an option, that loyalty is negotiable, and that your boundaries are flexible. Machiavelli would never allow that. He would say, if someone betrays you once, never forget it. You may forgive, but you must never forget. Let's ask a deeper question. Why do we keep trusting the same types of people who betray us? Why do we ignore the early signs? Why do we silence our intuition? The answer lies in our own unmet needs. We want connection. We want to believe in people. We want to be loved, admired, understood. And sometimes we project those desires onto people who haven't earned them. We see potential instead of patterns. We fall in love with who we want them to be instead of who they are. To break this cycle, we must develop emotional precision. We must stop confusing intensity with intimacy. Just because someone makes you feel deeply doesn't mean they're safe. Just because someone shares pain with you doesn't mean they'll protect yours. Emotional connection is not the same as emotional safety. And if you don't learn to distinguish the two, you'll keep inviting betrayal into your inner world. There's another hard truth we must face. Sometimes we betray ourselves first and others just follow our lead. When you stay silent instead of speaking truth, when you please instead of protect, when you ignore red flags in the name of peace, you betray your own soul. And when you normalize that self-abandonment, it becomes easier for others to do the same to you. You teach people how to treat you through the standards you set for yourself. Machiavelli would argue that power, not love, keeps people loyal. That's not romantic, but it's often true. When people know there are consequences for betrayal, they are less likely to do it. This isn't about revenge, it's about boundaries. It's about making it clear that you are not to be manipulated, used, or discarded without cost. When your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee, people behave differently. Respect is not given, it is enforced. Let's explore the connection between betrayal and identity. When someone betrays you, it doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes who you thought you were. You start to question your judgment. You doubt your kindness. You wonder if you were naive, stupid, or too soft. But these thoughts are traps. They keep you stuck in shame. The truth is, your willingness to trust was not the problem. Your lack of discernment was. And that's something you can fix. To heal from betrayal, we must rewrite the story. Not as victims, but as visionaries. The betrayal was not the end. It was the beginning of you seeing clearly, of cutting ties with illusions, of upgrading your standards, your awareness, your circle. Sometimes the knife in your back carves the doorway to your next level. But only if you stop blaming the betrayer and start evolving from the experience. Here's a practical exercise. Think of the last time you were betrayed. Write down everything you missed, every red flag, every gut feeling you ignored, every excuse you made for them. Then write down what you learned. Not what you lost, what you gained. Because every betrayal has a gift buried inside it. The gift of clarity, of strength, of rebirth. There's also a metaphysical layer to this. Some betrayals are not just psychological, they're spiritual. They force you to face the parts of yourself that were unguarded, unhealed, or too trusting. They awaken the warrior inside. The part of you that doesn't just love but protects that love. The part that doesn't just give but guards what is sacred. In this way, betrayal becomes a sacred fire, burning away weakness and revealing your essence. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that it is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. That line has been misunderstood. He wasn't telling us to be cruel. He was telling us that love without strength is fragile, that people feel safest when they know you are kind but not harmless, loving but not blind, forgiving but not forgetful. That's the balance. That's the power. Ask yourself, who are you when someone betrays you? Do you collapse? Do you retaliate? Or do you rise in silence, study the lesson, close the gate, and move forward with more wisdom than before? That choice defines your future. That choice turns pain into power. And here's one final question for this chapter. Would you rather be betrayed by someone else or betray yourself by pretending it never happened? Here comes a moment after the betrayal, after the devastation, after the rage where silence begins to settle. Not the silence of shock, but the silence of clarity. You begin to see things as they truly are, not as you imagined. The story you were living no longer fits, and the personas fall away. And what's left is raw truth. This is where transformation begins, not in vengeance, not in despair, but in the willingness to see without illusion. Machiavelli understood that betrayal, as painful as it is, cleans the lens through which we view human nature. It strips away fantasy. It forces us to ask, what is loyalty really made of? Is it love, gratitude, shared experience? No. Loyalty is conditional. It's tied to power, to benefit, to fear, to mutual interest. And while that may sound dark, it's actually liberating. Because when we stop expecting loyalty to be unconditional, we begin to build it with intention. You might ask, can anyone truly be trusted then? And the answer is yes, but not blindly. Trust is not a gift. It's a slow currency. It builds over time, through tested experience, through consistent behavior, through aligned values. You don't trust someone because they say the right things. You trust them because they've shown you who they are when it's inconvenient, when staying loyal costs them something, when they had every reason to leave and didn't. The most powerful people are not those who trust no one. They are those who know exactly who to trust and how far. Machiavelli's wisdom isn't to abandon relationships, it's to manage them with clarity, and to know who is there for your soul, who is there for your status, and who is there for your downfall, smiling while you rise. And once you know who's who, you move accordingly. Not with paranoia, but with precision. Think of your life as a kingdom. Not everyone deserves access to the throne room. Some belong in the outer walls, some even outside the gates, and a few, very few, have earned the key. The mistake most of us make is giving that key to whoever shows up with charm, shared pain, or history. But history can lie, and charm is a weapon. The question is not, how long have they known me? The question is, have they proven they can protect the kingdom I'm building? Let's go even deeper. Betrayal doesn't just come from individuals. Sometimes it comes from systems, from institutions, from cultures we trusted to protect us, only to find out that we were never truly seen, that the loyalty we gave was never reciprocated, that the values we upheld were only convenient when they served the narrative. In those moments, the pain is not just personal, it's existential. You begin to question everything. But that questioning is sacred. That rupture is the beginning of awakening. When the system fails you, you are given the opportunity to become your own system, to build a new internal structure, born that doesn't rely on external validation or false alliances. One that is forged through truth, trial, and self-respect. This is how empires are born, not just outside, but within. Machiavelli would say, betrayal is inevitable, but being destroyed by it is optional. You can choose to become bitter, hardened, closed, or you can choose to become sharper, wiser, more sovereign. The knife in your back can become the sword in your hand if you're willing to do the inner work. So what does that inner work look like? First, you must reclaim the narrative. Betrayal often leaves us feeling like victims, like everything happened to us. But power returns when we take ownership. What did I ignore? What did I tolerate? What did I know deep down but didn't want to face? These questions hurt, but they save you, because they return the power to your hands. Second, you must rebuild your boundaries, not as walls, but as filters. You don't need to shut everyone out. You need to become more discerning about who gets in. Boundaries are not about fear. They're about clarity. They are the architecture of self-respect. And once you build them, betrayal becomes less frequent, not because people change, but because you no longer invite chaos into sacred spaces. Third, you must master emotional detachment. Not from life, but from illusion. The people who hurt you are not gods. They are not devils. They are human, flawed, fearful, often operating from their own wounds. When you stop needing them to be more than they are, you stop being disappointed. And in that space, you create peace not because they changed, but because you did. Let's ask something terrifying. What if betrayal was exactly what you needed? What if it was the only thing strong enough to break your attachment to a version of life that was too small for you? What if the collapse of that relationship, that partnership, that trust was the invitation into your next level? Not everyone who wounds you is your enemy. Some are unknowing messengers, breaking you so you can be reborn. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is strategy. Pain is information. Every betrayal reveals what matters, is who matters, what you need to protect, what you need to let go of. Pain is the spotlight. And if you're willing to look, it shows you exactly what needs to change. Now let's talk about power. Real power. The kind that Machiavelli respected. It doesn't come from revenge. It comes from evolution. When you rise from betrayal without bitterness, when you enforce boundaries without rage, when you protect your peace without apology, that is power. That is sovereignty. That is when the world starts to move differently around you. People begin to notice. You're no longer easy to manipulate. You no longer react. You no longer explain. You simply observe, adjust, move. And that calm, grounded presence, it terrifies manipulators because they can't control what they can't confuse. This is the next level of your life: clarity over chaos, presence over performance, truth over illusion, and relationship by invitation, not obligation. You do not owe anyone access to your trust. That is not cruelty. That is wisdom. And it's the only way to live clean, aligned, and powerful. Let me leave you with this final question. One that only you can answer, and one that might define everything going forward. If betrayal is inevitable, who do you want to become after it? Because that choice, that moment of reinvention, is where your real life begins. Not in the betrayal, not in the pain, but in your response to it. You can shrink, or you can expand. You can close, or you can open with new awareness. You can stay bitter, or you can become unbreakable. The knife was real. The pain was real. But so is your power. So is your wisdom. So is your next chapter. And that chapter, if you're ready, is yours to write now.